I'm feeling nostalgic right now. Do you guys remember a game series called Castlevania? It was a gaming series, guys, that came out all the way back in 1986, and it's had a number of releases since its first, of course, its first initial release. And at this point, it's a big question mark as to what the future of this series might hold. So let's talk about Castlevania and what happened to the franchise. Guys, as I said, in 1986 is when Castlevania first started. Obviously, I wasn't even alive back then. But over the course of time, we're talking a span of, from, 1986 all the way to 2014, guys, is when we got our last release. I mean, there was a number of releases here that ended up happening so consistently. I mean, you're talking 86, 87, 88, 89. Each year you were having either expansions or you were having new games. Of course, there was a break in 90, then you had another game in 91. And then, of course, you had, 92 was off. You had 93 to 95. Then another in 97. Now, some of these guys are obviously expansions and of course, continuations of the franchise. But that being said, when you look at the consistency here, I mean, there was a game every single year, or at least an expansion, from 2005 to 2010. Then you had a couple of years off until 2013. Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Mirror of Fate came out in 2013. And then our very last edition of the franchise was back in 2014, Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2. Well, what I wanted to talk about, guys, was an article that came out from Jordan Barnowski from SVG about why Konami won't release another console Castlevania. So the Castlevania series is one of the classes of gaming. The original game first appeared in 1986, and the Belmont clan has been hunting bloodsuckers ever since. All told, there have been dozens of Castlevania titles across nearly every imaginable platform. The series has been included on both the NES Classic and SNES Classic, appearing alongside Nintendo's own historic characters and worlds. It's a game series that has endured its ups and downs and has withstood the test of time, and it always seems like a solid choice for a classic revival. However, fans' requests to Konami have fallen on mostly deaf ears. It seems unlikely that a big budget console Castlevania will be headed down the pipe in the foreseeable future for a number of reasons. Never say never, but we wouldn't hold our breath for a new entry in this series anytime soon. So let's get the obvious out of the way. When most fans clamor for a new Castlevania title, they want a new Symphony of the Night. The 1997 PlayStation title helped to redefine the direction of the series and even co-establish the name of the genre, Metroidvania, along with Nintendo's Metroid franchise. Giant Bomb writes that even though games in the 2D side-scrolling action title with exploration elements existed long before 1997, Symphony of the Night is the title that defined the genre as the word Metroidvania became common nomenclature not long after its release. So look, before we go any farther, guys, I think something that's really important to mention is that you can never say never to something like Castlevania. I mean, this is a franchise that has been going on for a very long time, so I would never put it past Konami. Now, is Konami working on a number of other projects? Yeah, probably. There's been rumor of a new Silent Hills coming out. There's been a lot of different talks of different titles around Konami. But that doesn't mean that they would never come back to Castlevania. Obviously, they were doing something right with a series that was kind of testing time, essentially, because, I mean, obviously this franchise has been going on for so long, so why wouldn't they continue the series at some point or another? Now, after Symphony of the Night, the Castlevania series was riding high. The new technology available on the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 meant that the next entry in the series would be even bigger and better, right? Not so fast. The first official Castlevania title after Symphony of the Night was Castlevania Legends. It came out on the original Game Boy and is the lowest rated in the series. After that, the maligned Nintendo 64 titles were released. The first received some average ratings, but the second of those titles, Legacy of Darkness, received a critical shellacking upon release. Castlevania was not continuing a hot streak in the late 90s. So look, I think part of this kind of gets me to the first real thing. I think what happened to Castlevania was there was a lot of games, right? But a lot of those ended up being not as good as people were thinking or were hoping for, obviously. I mean, I think what ended up happening was there were just too many bad titles in Castlevania, even with the reboots and all of those different things. It seemed that no matter what Konami was doing, it still was getting bad reception overall. It just didn't have that same, that real same feeling that people loved about Castlevania in the past. With the fits and starts that the Castlevania series was going through, Konami decided it was time for a change. The longtime lead of the series and brains behind Symphony of the Night, Koji Igarashi, was shifted to another part of the company, and the reins were handed over to different creative directors. This new branch of the Castlevania series was called Lords of Shadow, and it was good. However, like we've already seen with Castlevania, that success would not last. The first Lords of Shadow game was met with extremely positive reviews. It wasn't Symphony of the Night, but it was a good new direction for the series. The sequel, Mirror of Fate, slipped a bit, and the true follow-up, Lords of Shadow 2, just could not live up to the lofty perception of Castlevania. True fans wanted a side-scrolling sequel worthy of Symphony of the Night, but Konami was going through too much turmoil to make that happen. And that was kind of step number 2 of what happened to Castlevania, guys. Number 1 was obviously some bad games that came out. Even when a good game came out, Konami was going through some stuff at this time as well, just problems internally with the, of course, with the developer. Now, Kotaku writes that about the time the first Lords of Shadow game came out, something strange was happening at Konami. A mobile title called Dragon Collection was making a tremendous return on the relatively small development cost, and big budget titles were starting to look less appealing to the people in charge. The corporate culture in some of the bigger branches of the studio began to suffer as a result. The report from Nikkei that Kotaku referenced indicates some awful working conditions. Cameras were installed not for security reasons, but to monitor employee movement. Staff that were deemed no longer viable were reassigned as security guards or manual laborers rather than being laid off. Members of the staff that expressed support for an employee who was leaving the company were shuffled into less desirable positions. So, obviously, Konami had gone through a lot of bad things, guys. And we're about to get to some of the other things that they did, that being like parting ways or kind of having disagreements with some of their most beloved creators, that being Hideo Kojima. So, unless you were completely outside of video game culture in 2015, you probably heard about the saga between Konami and Hideo Kojima. The maestro of the critically acclaimed Metal Gear Solid series, Kojima fell out hard and fast with his own company. The studio removed its name from Metal Gear Solid 5 and makes practically no mention of him creating the game. Polygon writes that Konami restricted internet and communication access for senior members of Kojima's team, and it wasn't long before he was out of the company working on a new IP. So, obviously, guys, I think part of the unfortunate quote-unquote end of Castlevania happened in a time where Konami just had a lot of problems going on. Internally as a team, they just had so many issues going on. Whether you're talking work conditions, whether you're talking about having disagreements with some of your best creators and the best minds in all of gaming as a whole. Hideo Kojima, this guy could become one of the greatest, game developers all time and creative directors out there. So, when you have someone like that, you don't have disagreements. Now, it looks good that Konami and Hideo are coming back together, allegedly, to work on Silent Hills. But that leads me to the next thing is, maybe Konami just doesn't have Castlevania even in the background at this point. Not even a thought, really. They're looking straight ahead to how they can repair their image in one way, shape, or form. So, look, the other thing that probably went wrong is Konami's decision to move away from big budget console games seems to be in part due to the growth of the mobile game market. Part of it dates back to the 2010 release of Dragon Collection, but small budget mobile games raking in massive amounts of money has to be an enticing prospect for any gaming company. That siren song has not gone unheard in the hallowed halls of Castlevania. If you are desperate for anything related to the series, there's a brand new title coming soon to iOS in Japan at some point. Castlevania Grimmer of Souls is a 2D side-scrolling Castlevania title featuring both fourth-player co-op and competitive play. The closed beta occurred in early 2018, but it was also exclusive to Japan. Konami's been fairly tight-lipped about Grimmer of Souls since then, but they have been adamant that it is an iOS exclusive and not headed to consoles. So look, guys, and we see this so much in many different games, right? In gaming, and just in general, a lot of big developers and publishers are looking at console games versus that of mobile games. And Castlevania might just be suffering the same fate as Command and Conquer, as Diablo, even though Diablo is obviously getting a Diablo 4. But just a lot of these big games and really AAA titles, technically speaking, out there are getting mobile games. Not saying it's a bad thing, because at least it's a way you can continue connecting with the franchise. But at the same time, people want to be able to play like a console game or a PC game, have true additions to the franchise. Having it on your mobile phone or, something of that nature is great, because it kind of, it can pass some time when you're bored at home or something. But when you actually want to play a game, a lot of times you want to sit down and actually play a game on the console or on PC. And so I think, guys, that was step 3, is really Konami moving in this direction of playing on your mobile device versus console is definitely the direction they're going in moving forward with Castlevania. And who knows how far that's going to go, because with Command & Conquer Rivals, didn't really go so well for that franchise, and who knows what the future looks like with Command & Conquer moving forward, even though they did announce a remastered version of those games. But let me know what you guys think about Castlevania. Would you guys want there to be a continuation of this franchise? Let me know in the comment section below. Because as a community, guys, if you want this game made and you're a huge fan of Castlevania, you have to voice your opinion, and you have to really start a movement around it to try to get Konami's attention as to, hey, we want this game, we want a continuation of these games, a storied franchise, that we want it to continue on consoles and on PC, and even on, of course, even on mobile devices, whatever it might be. Continuations are something that we have to voice to the developers. But like I said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And for more Castlevania content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.